Hi, this is Jay Baer, and you are listening to the Dealer Playbook podcast, the golden anniversary, episode number 50.
You're dialed in to the Dealer Playbook podcast, where it's all about winning auto dealer strategies that deliver proven results. And now your hosts, Robert Weissman and Michael Cirillo.
Hey everybody, what is going on? You're listening to episode 50 of the Dealer Playbook podcast, where we feature weekly conversations with elite trainers, speakers, and authors for you, today's automotive professionals. My name is Michael Cirillo, and I'm joined by the man himself, Mr. Robert Weissman. What's going on?
What's up, man? Happy to be happy 50.
50, man. It's been a fun fun process getting to 50 episodes. It's kind of a nice.
It's been a hoot.
It's been a. I mean, we've learned so much along the way, and featured so many incredible guests. And today is no exception. I mean, with listeners in whatever it is now, I think 55 plus countries, thousands of downloads a month, people are tuning into the show. And listen, for those of you listening in, we couldn't be more grateful. Now, today, we're thrilled to introduce our guest to you. Some of you might know who he is. He's spoken at some automotive conferences, but for those of you that don't, this guy is a New York Times best-selling author. He wrote a book called Utility, which we're going to link you up with in the show notes, so stay tuned for that. And he just has some really cool outside of the box thinking when it comes to things that you can be doing at the dealership level to attract higher quality, customers. We're sitting down with Jay Baer, and it's such a delight. Robert, what are your thoughts on Jay and where we're going to go with this before we jump into the show?
Definitely big fan. I've been checking out again. He talks about it in there. I tune into his daily video show.
Yeah.
It's about three minutes, easy to consume. The show Social Pros is definitely one of the podcasts in my queue that I listen to, which he's a co-host on. And his blog, convinceandconvert.com, has him and a lot of other guest posts, guest bloggers and stuff on there. Always powerful. And it's just nice. Like, we're on a roll with these. I just dropped my phone. I don't know if you heard that. We're on a roll with these like outside of automotive, and and he brought up the great point about it, like made me even think how much valuable these outside of automotive people's insights and expertise is, because he's right. It's like someone within the industry is mostly going to give you like the same type of information, and it's going to be around this all around.
Yeah, and I mean,
same thing.
That's what's happening right now. We go to these conferences, we read these blog posts, we go to these forums, and everybody's just talking about the same thing, and it's from one dimension, right? And I think getting these people from outside the industry, like Jay, to deliver insights into what's working everywhere else. It's something important to remember, and then we'll jump into the show. Marketing is marketing. Don't think like automotive marketing is different than other types of marketing. The concepts are the same. The psychology of it is the same. How consumers react to it is the same. And you're going to hear Jay in this episode. Robert, just real quick, jumping into it, you mentioned he has this 3-minute video segment that he does on a daily basis. You're going to hear Jay in this episode talk about how he leverages that. You don't want to miss it. So without further ado, let's jump into our sit down with Jay Baer. Here we go.
Let's get it in.
All right, everybody, we are sitting down right now with somebody who's done some speaking actually in the automotive industry. He's keynoted some pretty big events inside the industry. You've probably had the pleasure of listening to him. Now, he's described, you ready for this, as a tequila-loving, hype-free strategist who has advised more than 700 brands on their marketing strategy since 1994, including 31 of the Fortune 500 companies. He got his start online long ago, actually, even before Yahoo, and he left a career in politics to take the internet plunge. That's right. Today, we are sitting down with our guest, Jay Baer. Jay, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks, guys. Fantastic to be here. Always nice to talk autos.
Hey, Jay,
Playbook
what kind of
podcast.
tequila do you like?
I like all kinds. I do kind of collect tequila. I used to live in Arizona, which is kind of where I first got that Jones. I live in the Midwest now, and it's not as easy to get good tequila here. But for generally speaking, I prefer reposado tequila. It's nice to just kind of have sipping some tequila by the fireplace in the winter is a
Has
good
it got
gig.
the worm?
It's a very good gig. No worm.
They ever swallowed a worm?
I have not. I have swallowed a worm, but not a tequila worm.
All right.
It's a different podcast. It's a totally different podcast.
Different podcast. There you go.
That's a college. That's a college days podcast.
Yeah, there you go. So, and we digress. But
I was in college. It's a true story. When I was in college, the guy who was the roommate of my friend.
Oh, one of those. My roommate's friend's cousins, brother.
We were freshmen, right? And so we're doing things that you shouldn't do, and everybody's feeling no pain. And this guy was just kind of a freak anyway. And he's like, "Hey, how much you guys pay me if I eat this mouse?" And his roommate had a snake. So they had all kinds of mice. "How much you guys pay me if I eat this mouse?" We're like, "What are you talking about, dude?" He's like, "I'm going to eat this mouse." So we're like, "Well, dude, if you're actually going to eat a mouse, we're definitely taking up a collection." And so in those days, money was
I got
different.
$5 on it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's like 20 years ago, right? So we cobbled together like $50, which back in those days, we were talking about 1987 in college, like $50 was like, $250,000 now. And so, he just grabs the mouse out of the cage and puts it in his mouth and chews it up and swallows it.
Oh, God. Man,
Yeah, that's the tails hanging out of the corner of the whole thing. You'd hear the bones crunch. It was. I still think about it from time to time, and now your listeners as well. This is the kind of marketing insight you get on episode 50.
Yeah, that's it, man. That would have been too bad that you didn't have smartphones and all that around back then. That's viral.
The Instagram video would have been enormous.
Oh man. I feel like the ghost has been sucked out of my face right now. Like it's just like,
Yeah. And what's this guy doing today? Do you know?
I know what he's doing today, actually, and you won't believe this. He is a middle school principal.
Oh, I was gonna say, didn't you see him on the last episode of America's Got Talent eating mice?
Principal of a middle school.
Be like, thought Jay was gonna be like, actually, he's the vice president of my company.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
And he's the co-host of the Dealer Playbook podcast. That's how we put this.
That's how
magic.
It all came around. Okay, so I don't even know how to segue into what we're talking about after that. So
just wait for you. So here's the thing, right? You're exactly right. In the old days, like we couldn't record everything, and then we went into this transitional period where video started to get more important in business, but we didn't necessarily have the bandwidth to stream video on smartphones because we still had 2G or 3G or whatever. And so at that point, when people made video, dealers made video, first and continue to make a lot of video, but it was always like, okay, well, this has got to be really, really nice and produced, and it's got to be 5 minutes and high res, and we got to get a film crew and all this. And now we're at the point, of course, where it's much more just run and gun. Like I do a daily video show called Jay Today. I just shoot on my iPhone, and I'm sure a lot of people in the auto business are just doing the same thing now. There's an example from Autodome, which is a dealership. I think it's mostly Toyota in Mississauga, Ontario, in Canada, outside Toronto. And they, every time somebody takes a car off the lot, they just take the iPhone out and they record a quick 15-second testimonial from that customer, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram, put it on their website. It's just the ability to communicate all kinds of facets of your business with video instantly is an absolute game changer. And what I tell people all the time is if you don't have a content marketing strategy that is significantly rooted in video, you got to get one, Jack. And I mean like now, because as an author, it breaks my heart, but Johnny don't read. Like Johnny don't want to read anymore. Nobody wants to read anymore. It's for suckers, right? Like why would I want to read when I can just turn on my phone and watch video? And so you've got to find ways to create compelling video about your dealership, about your product, most importantly about your people, because everybody sells cars. The difference is the people.
Okay, so this actually brings a question to mind. You're talking about. This is coming from a New York Times best-selling author right now, and I'm actually working on a book. Are you suggesting in that form of content strategy, video is there to be at the forefront of the other forms of content that you're creating, like a book or a blog post or whatever it might be?
Or do you create
Absolutely.
a video and then it
Yeah.
turns to a blog post and to this and to that and everything else?
Yeah, no doubt. Just in terms of books per se, like every book that I create, I'm working on my 5th book right now. Every book that I write gets shorter and shorter, right? And it's not because I have less to say. It's that people have less patience, right? So nobody wants to read a 300-page book, right? So everyone gets shorter. But you're exactly right about the video becomes something else. So I want to tell you what I do with my daily video show. So it's 3 minutes a day, called Jay Today. I shoot on my iPhone, then we take it, and each of those episodes becomes an iTunes podcast. It becomes an iTunes video podcast. Then we transcribe it using an inexpensive transcription service. It becomes a blog post on our site. We change the headline and rework it slightly, and it becomes a post on LinkedIn. We change the headline, rework it slightly. It becomes a post on Medium. Then we take the video and post it to Facebook. We take the video and post it to my personal Facebook. We take the video, we post it to YouTube, and then we feature it in our email newsletter. So one 3-minute video, which literally takes me 3.5 minutes to record, becomes 9 pieces of content. And that's the key to content marketing. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's making more wheels out of the wheel you already have.
And it sounds like that it's 9 pieces of damn near unique content as well. Correct? Because you're reworking. You're remixing it. Maybe that the same premise and the same objective is accomplished in each one, but every piece is different across each platform. Correct?
Yeah, certainly slightly different because the audience is different, right? And how somebody wants to learn in a blog post versus how somebody wants to learn in a Facebook video is different.
So, and I love this, Kay, because this is something that we talk to dealers all the time about. We say, look, turn on your video camera on your phone. Do a review video of a vehicle, get that video's audio transcribed. That becomes a blog post that can link up, then you can post it to social media and all that kind of stuff. I love that you've just given us kind of an outline here of 9 pieces of content. But let me ask you this, because this is kind of the question that we get a lot. How long total investment of time? And I know from our angle that the time doesn't really matter because you did the work once and it's posted out there. But just for those listening in, how much time total for reworking headlines, getting the transcription done is invested into this once to get these 9 pieces of content?
The good news is I've got an awesome team to work on some of those things. We use a terrific company called Candidio to do the initial video edit. And so they put the graphics on it and trim it up and things like that. So Candidio probably spends an hour, and then my team probably spends another couple hours, I would say, on making all the different graphics and posting it and tagging it and linking it. And there's just a lot of, none of it's particularly hard. It's just a little bit complicated. So there's a lot of moving parts there. So I would say for every video, it's probably 3 hours worth of time, I would guess, in order to put it everywhere.
And really, in the grand scheme of things, like we're talking about 3 hours done once to deliver you 9 pieces of unique content across the web. I think, that's spectacular. And I think that's something that, dealers need to be focusing on, because I think, and I get a sense of this from my observation, and Jay, you can correct me if you feel otherwise, but I feel like, everyone is spinning their wheels. They're getting overwhelmed at just how much content they have to create, and they think forward to the time investment that it's going to take to do this. It's like, oh man, okay, so I did a review video on the Toyota Sienna, but now I've got to sit down and write a blog post about it, and then I've got to try and figure out what to say on social media about it. That could take a whole week. And I think sometimes people get so overwhelmed at that they just stop taking action.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're like, this, I got it. And in many cases, they've got other things to do, right? I mean, creating content isn't their only job. Maybe they're doing fleet also, right? And they're handling internet leads, and they got a bunch of other stuff they got to deal with. And so I totally get that. So number one, you got to pick your spots and figure out, what are the things that are really important to create and what are the things that aren't important. But this idea of repackaging content makes it so much easier. And then the other thing I would say is that we spend a lot of time in our company, on the consulting side of our company, helping people understand the power of UGC and EGC, right? Every customer of a dealership is potentially in marketing, and every employee of the dealership is potentially in marketing. I feel like the marketing guys or the marketing gals put too much on their own shoulders because, somebody who is in sales could create a 45-second, 90-second demo video of that car way easier than the marketing person could. And the best demo video ever would be somebody who already owns the car. It's like when that person comes in for their 30-day checkup or comes in for tire rotation or comes in for anything, be like, hey, here's the thing, Susie Johnson, who has a Corolla. What if I gave you $20 off today's service and I put this phone in your face and you gave me a 90-second tour of what you like about this car?
Right.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
Not only is it easier, it's way more credible.
Well, and going along that line, I think, the power of social proof on this type of stuff is worth its weight in gold, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, the research from Nielsen shows that 92% of Americans trust recommendations from friends and family members. 47% of Americans trust advertising from companies. So you don't have to just change your message. You got to change the messenger. Like, your customers are the ones that should ideally be telling your story, especially in social, because not only is it more credible, but it's actually going to be seen, right? I mean, the chances of me seeing a post from my friend is way better than me seeing a post from your dealership, just based on the way the Facebook algorithm works. So the more you can get customers to create content and tell stories on your behalf, you will be vastly better off.
And that goes to, recommendations are helpful, and I'm using this kind of as a segue into, some of the right ways to do content, not necessarily just the process, but how to deliver value through your content. And like you said, those statistics are staggering. People want to and rely on the help and value that they get from other people, or in other words, they find it more valuable when they hear it from real people versus brands just kind of trying to tell somebody else's story. And I think that's one of the things that I love about your book, Utility. I mean, the subtitle kind of says it all. Why smart marketing is about help, not hype. And I think something that we traditionally see in the car business is kind of this drag and drop, kind of templatized, hey, this make a dealer located in, location A is the best place to buy a car because we have top trained technicians, we have the best sales team, and it becomes very sales pitchy. So I love this concept about helping people because I think it ties into over-delivering value. Do you think... And I mean, from your perspective, why are people hesitant to over-deliver value in the content that they create? Because I think everything kind of seems self-centered and self-promotional and whatever. How do we break the barrier of, no, you know what? The content I create is just going to be no holds value for people. I'm going to give them my best information and hope that turns into something.
Well, I think it's because we have been trained as business people and as marketers for hundreds of years, right? That it's a quid pro quo, that I give you something and you give me something back, and that something is money, right? So we have been trained for decades, for generations, that you make something that drives customers to a purchase or a repurchase, right? That's the whole point of marketing, is to create something that drives a profitable consumer behavior. And the notion of utility, of creating marketing that's so useful people would pay for it, isn't necessarily different. It just elongates that time horizon. So it doesn't not drive people towards a purchase. It just gives them value so that they remember you and think differently about you, so that when they're ready to make a purchase, they think of you first. There's a great example. I did an event for dealers, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And I was saying that, just as you mentioned, dealers in general are really bad at creating content or marketing that isn't about them, right? So content marketing for a dealer is videos of the car. And that's fine. You should have that, but that's not terribly interesting, nor is it differentiated. And so I always tell people, give yourself permission to make the story bigger, right? Create content that's helpful on a different plane. And I was saying that to this room of 1,000 dealers or 2,000 dealers that it's a crime that nobody does that. And I pulled up an example of a locksmith. And there was a locksmith in Kansas, if I recall correctly, who made this really great infographic about how to buy a used car. Like what should you do? How should you bargain? What should you look for? And I'm thinking, and I put it up on the slide. I said, hey, how is it that a locksmith in Kansas is putting together this kind of content that is really helpful, and you guys aren't, and you're actually in the car business? And I said, so what I want you to do is figure this out. And the first person who figures it out, you're going to get a special prize from me. A week later, I get an email from a dealership in Colorado who says, Jay, we took your advice, and they created this awesome infographic about how to go about your business if you get locked out of your car. So it was like the exact opposite. It was fantastic, right? So I sent those guys a bottle of tequila. They did a fantastic job. So, because here's the thing, right? If the whole idea is to create useful content, and that is the idea. If you just create things that are about your products and your services, that's not really a utility. It's just a brochure delivered in a different format, right? So, the nice thing about the car business, the auto business, the dealership business is that cars are so endemic to our culture. You can create things that are so much broader and still be tangentially relevant, right? So if I was in the dealer business, I'd be sending people an email every Thursday that says, hey, here's our idea for an amazing road trip this weekend that you can take with your kids. Stop here for ice cream. Stop here for the best burger in the region. Boom, boom, boom. Do that once a week. Stay on people's radar. Just like that kind of stuff is so easy to execute, but it only will work if you give yourself permission to stop talking about cars.
Interesting. Yeah. And I'm sitting here writing notes as we speak, because I think, this is so valuable. I think, we say this all the time. Start talking to people about the things they care about, and this goes right in line with that. So you've given some suggestions on things they can do to kind of break out of the box. What do you think? I mean, obviously people are scared to get started, and it's because, we typically want money, but do you find that, people should stop thinking about the money like we just talked about and start thinking about how contact information or, getting people to give their information is also a form of currency, so to speak, because there's value to it when people give you their information to get something that you're delivering to them? So in other words, we talk a lot about lead magnets and all those sorts of things. Should dealers be going down that route?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all about relevancy, right? It's all about relevancy. People will gladly give you their information if what is behind that magic curtain is relevant to them, is useful, is of value. And so the typical lead gen circumstance in a dealership is, let's do everything we can to make sure that we capture people who are already in the market for a vehicle, right? So whether they're on our website or they're on a local website or they're on cars.com or KBB or Edmunds or whatever, right? Let's make sure that we step in front of that train so that when somebody's in the funnel, they think of us first instead of the guys around the corner. I get that. And you should do that, because if somebody's in the funnel, you should absolutely make sure that you are part of that conversation. Where I think dealerships are missing the boat entirely is trying to build relationships with potential customers before they're in the market for a car. So what I would do is create things of really high value and give them away, or give them away in exchange for an email address, and then occasionally send people something useful via email so that someday when they're ready to buy a car, which might be a year from now, might be 5 years from now, they think of you first. Instead of waiting for them to actively raise their hand, build relationships before they're ready, and ultimately that will pay off. But it requires, to sort of helicopter up, thinking about what those relationships look like and when they start.
And I think, and it really depends on the dealership identifying a clear goal from the beginning, right? So, and I find that a lot of time, most dealerships are just focused on, well, we want to get more leads or we want more traffic, but I don't really think like what you're saying, I don't really think that's ever the issue. I mean, traffic's never a problem because you can turn it on and off like a light switch, but it's identifying a clear goal, who you're speaking to, about what, and then what's the funnel that you're going to lead them through so that we are attracting more qualified people when the time comes. When it comes to content marketing,
you're right. I mean, you don't want traffic, and you don't really want leads, right? What you really want is customer relationships,
right?
And so we try and use traffic and leads as proxy for relationships, but they're not.
Right.
It's not. I mean, traffic is not the goal, right? You're not selling ads, right? Traffic is maybe a means to an end, but ultimately it's about, do those turn into customer relationships? And a lot of times they don't. And you can get more traffic to your site, but if that traffic doesn't convert, well, then what have you accomplished? You're just wasting money.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so, I mean, now and then of course you build relationships through the content that you create, and it's not immediate, is it? I mean, no relationship building is really immediate, do you think? Or
typically no. Although I will say in the dealership business, the dynamics are a little different than in other businesses, or they can be, only because a lot of times when people, I shouldn't say a lot of time, sometimes when people are in the market for a car, they're in a market for a car now, right? Their car just died, or they got their tax refund, or whatever, right? That they have a defined time horizon, and they're shopping, right? They're checking prices, they're driving around, going to dealerships. I mean, they're actively in the game, and at that point, you definitely want to be as helpful as possible. But the key is to create useful marketing that's targeted at that stage of the funnel, right? And so one of the things to think about is, okay, what can we create that's useful before somebody's looking to buy a car? What can we create when they're just, very, very starting? Like, they don't know if they want a Toyota or a Cadillac. What can we do when they're at the next level of consideration? They've got their, magic list of 5. And what can we do when they know what model they want, but they're trying to pick between us and the next dealer? Like, I would literally break down that funnel stage and say, okay, what can we create that's massively useful at every stage of that funnel, so that we're differentiating with usefulness all the way down that funnel. That's the right way to think about it, I believe, because people's needs are so different based on how close or how far away they are from a purchase.
Okay, so interesting. I mean, so how does this relate to, in chapter 4 of, utility, you talk about how, we need to build, traditionally we've always tried to build loyalty with people, but now we need to build loyalty with information. How does that differ from building a relationship, or is it all one and the same thing?
I think it's pretty much the same thing, and that concept is perhaps most egregiously true in your business. Every dealership knows that it used to be, back in the day, people would come on the lot and say, what kind of cars do you have? And how much are these cars, right? And what kind of engine does this car have? And now, of course, people come onto the lot and they have as much information at their fingertips as the salesperson, if not sometimes more. They know exactly what invoice is, and that changes the dynamics considerably. So now people shop initially for information, through information. And if your information is good enough, then they will say, okay, these guys are in the consideration set, and let me go call them or show up face to face, or actually put in a quote request, something like that. Take the next step.
Right.
You have to be good enough on the information side to graduate to the relationship side, and that's the exact opposite of how business used to be done. So I mean, today, with all of the transparency of online and all of the content and information that's out there, salespeople have kind of become the last step in the whole process of purchasing a vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
and they used
strange.
to be the first step.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is like the sale, you're right, like the process of the customer has changed so much, but in the majority, I'm not saying everywhere in this business, but the majority, the sales process is and on the dealership end hasn't changed, which I can't figure out.
So so dealers are still expecting that they're the first, I guess, line of contact. But the world has kind of changed around us, and we're going online looking for this information, yet no one's providing it. So I kind of find this funny because really the only place then to find information that's related to, educating customers is typically handled by a lot of third-party sites like Edmunds.com or AutoTrader.
Yes.
And I think that's such a shame because you're as a dealership, you're giving the ability to educate to third parties that then will send that traffic or those customers to whoever. It's
That's right.
no
That's why
they're coming to you.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's why those guys are so powerful, right? Because they've basically claimed the utility position as their own. And that's why I think the secret for local dealers or dealer groups is to change the nature of the information you're providing. That's where you get into that kind of telling bigger stories. Like, you're not going to out KBB those guys, right? You're not going to out cars.com those guys. You're just not. There's just no way. So what else can you provide that they won't provide that sets you apart? And maybe that is great road trips in your area, or here's our list of the top 7 hamburger places in the region. Or I used this idea recently for a conference of realtors, but it works equally well for dealerships. Is, a lot of your customers are parents who have kids in sports. Almost zero newspapers in the country now cover youth sports with any degree of comprehensiveness because it just doesn't pencil out. So what if your dealership said, hey, we're going to build an email newsletter that comes out every Friday or every Monday, be better every Monday, which has all the scores of all the Little League games and flag football games and gymnastic meets, and we're just going to have parents, text us in the scores. We're going to cobble it together, put an intern on it, and we're essentially going to be Little League news brought to you by the dealership. Every parent in town would subscribe to that. It'd be amazing.
Interesting.
Right? That's what I'm talking about. You find a way to be useful that isn't about cars, and it will be totally differentiated because nobody else will do it.
I love that. And I mean, when you really look at it, there's so much clutter out there with the, I guess, quote unquote marketing and content marketing that has happened. But like you said, I mean, these are the things that are going to help you rise above the clutter. It's going to be like, and I've used this analogy before, when you start doing this stuff, this is the kind, it's like you standing in the middle of a dark room being the only one holding a flashlight. Because while everyone's out there quarreling over price and they're competing with each other, like, oh, hey, we're the best. No, we're the best. No, we have top trained technicians. No, we have top trained. You're actually out there providing people with information that they care about, and in so doing, the spotlight turns to you, right?
Absolutely.
Love it. I love this whole concept. I think, we could talk about this for hours and hours and hours because it is something that, is so needed, and it's something that, works, we know works. And I pretty much say something similar to this every episode of the show, which is, if Jay Baer says it and Marcus Sheridan said it on the last episode and Gideon Shalwick and Grant Cardone and all of these other guests that we've had on the show are all saying the same thing, how long before those of you listening in catch on that it must be this way and it must work? And like you said, Jay, give yourself permission, to do it this way and to change up what you're doing and stop talking so much about yourself and just be something useful, be something of value to somebody, not worthless to everybody.
Absolutely, but it's really hard. Like, I get it, right? Because you go to the GM and say, "Hey, we're going to start this Little League news email newsletter. It's going to come out every Monday. We're going to need one full-time person to make this happen.
How many cars is
a lot of logistics?"
Yeah,
right. And he's going to say, "Well, we're in the car business. Why isn't this about cars?" Yeah. And the answer is because there's nothing that we can provide about cars that somebody can't get faster, easier, and better in 10 other places. We are at best the 12th best source of information about cars. I mean, literally, you really are. Yeah. The only information that you have that nobody else has is information about your own employees, right? Which is why I'm a huge believer in video testimonials and bios and storytelling about dealership employees. You can tell stories about your own people, and you can kind of maybe sort of tell stories about your own service department, but it's not like, oh, they have oil changes? Holy shit, I never heard of that. Like, wow, let's beat a path down to these guys.
And
Right?
1995.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of tough to, they have free popcorn? No way. So, just think about it. Like, if somebody wanted to buy a car, they're going to your website when they have to, not because they want to, because you don't have as much information as the other guys. Yeah. You just don't, and you never will. You never will.
Right. So just so focus on being useful. Put useful information on your website that funnels people in, builds relationships with them. And then when the opportunity comes that they need you or want to think about what you have to offer, all of that information sitting there, you've built a relationship with them.
Yep.
Exactly.
They find value in you, and then you guys trust each other.
And what do we hear? Like the big buzz that they talk about in this business is like, you go around, it's like they say 2% when you're talking about the marketing, because so much of dealership marketing is targeted towards that person that's ready to buy. It's all about the person in the market. So everything is built around, they say it's 2% of any given market is in the market for a car. Again, that's probably just pulled out of the sky, that number.
Right.
But you got to think that 2% is being bombarded with messages, about, hey, come do business, come buy. So that 98% that still has, needs, might want to learn how to change a headlight. And then you said non-automotive stuff, like they want to know the little league scores, the soccer scores, and, high school football, whatever. That's your opportunity to just, it's less competition. It's easier to make some noise with that group. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I would rather be on the radar of the 98%, so that when they become the 2%, they don't even comparison shop. They just come in the door.
Yeah.
You guys might know Findlay. Do you know the Findlay Group based in Vegas? Findlay has a dealership in Flagstaff, Arizona, where I used to live back in the day. And they have this thing called the Friendly Findlay Team, where they just take a group of dealership employees and they get together and they just do awesome community service projects. And so they go to their Facebook page and say, hey, Friendly Findlay Team has got 3 hours on Saturday. What would you like us to do? And people in the community just put suggestions on their Facebook page and they pick one to go do it. So they went to an elementary school and bagged up all the pine needles around the school because the maintenance department couldn't get to it, and it's a fire hazard. Sometimes they go to a local restaurant and say, hey, we're doing a restaurant takeover. If you drive, as a Toyota dealership, if you drive a Toyota to the restaurant today, it's free lunch on us. It doesn't have to be a Toyota you bought from us, any Toyota. Or they'll do gas pump takeovers. Come to this gas station today between 1 and 2 o'clock. If you drive a Toyota, free gas. They do stuff like that all the time. And once they started doing that, they got on so many people's radar in the community that when they were in the market, when they became the 2%, they went there first. 3 months after they started doing this program, they had the highest new vehicle sales month in the history of the dealership. And that's not an accident, right? It's just about being useful. It's not hard. This isn't hard. That's the thing that drives me crazy about this kind of marketing. Like, none of this is hard, but it requires a cultural change inside your organization, much more so than a marketing change.
Yeah, it's just being human.
Being a good human being. And the thing I love about that is it gets the dealership engaged in the community. But if you do it properly, I mean, again, back to smartphones and video capability, that video could, you could take video of being engaged in the community.
Oh yeah. Not only
and then have it turn into, like Jay said, you could have it turn into 9 different pieces of content.
Yeah, and dealerships are big in communities. I mean, they do tend to do a pretty good job at that. But again, I mean, Jay made a point. It's like that's a whole content opportunity right there in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a twist on that, right? So you're right. Dealerships are typically really good at community stuff, and thankfully that's true. But they do it without thinking about the content side, right? So a dealership will say, "Hey, we're going to go do a Habitat for Humanity thing." Right. And then they'll put it on their website, or they'll put it in their email newsletter, or something like that. Right. Great. Well, what I would do instead is, why don't you put together a list of the 15 different volunteer opportunities in the community, then buy Facebook ads and send that list to everybody in the community and say, hey, here's the 15 service organizations we recommend. And then if you want to, let people vote on which one you should support and then go do that one, right? It's just a small twist on taking the same thing and making it a content marketing opportunity instead of just we just showed up.
Yeah, and it's a story too, which it all I like that, definitely. Very good.
Okay, so real powerful stuff here for those of you listening in. Jay has dropped some power bombs on how you can think outside the box, where you can, utilize some things that you're probably already doing into some content opportunities. And by doing the work once, 2-3 hours a week when you get your process dialed in, even if it takes you 5 hours, okay, in 1 week, if it takes you 5 hours on top of the other things that you've got going on, you still have something that you can leverage into multiple pieces of content. You can get engaged in the community. You can do so many different things. And like Jay's just said, think about them from how they can become a content opportunity. And now you're really starting to speak to people about the things that they care about. So Jay, just in closing, if you had to just recap, say the top few things that you think dealers could be doing right now to really get the most out of this, what, not to put you on the spot, but kind of to put you on the spot, what would you say, maybe the top 3 things or top 3-4 things that you can think of where they should get started and what they should be thinking about and where do they go from here?
You should buy a copy of the book. That would be a good idea, I think.
Absolutely.
It will help you. And actually, a small plug, if you don't want to spend the $18 for utility on Amazon, my ebook, which is Utility for Real Estate, is only $2.99 on Kindle. And even though it's all about the real estate business, the dynamics of it are very, very similar to the dealership business, and you will really appreciate that. So that would be a good resource. Also, I think the first thing I would do is set up a program so that everybody in the dealership, whether they're employees or customers, is somehow involved or has the opportunity to be involved in content creation. I wouldn't let anybody leave the dealership without making a video about their experience at the dealership unless they explicitly signed a piece of paper that said no. I wouldn't let anybody come to work and work there a month without making a video about their background. You have a lot of stories to tell right in your dealership. You just got to tell them. So that's the first thing I would do. Unlock user-generated content and employee-generated content. Second thing I would do is find a way to tell bigger stories. Give yourself permission to tell some bigger stories, as we've been talking about here today. And then the third thing I would do is create a customer council and get a group of 5 or 6 customers and meet with them every month or so and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? Would you find this useful? Do you think this is something that people would use? Because when you seek counsel from people whose entire livelihood is based on selling cars, they're never going to say, yeah, let's do Little League scores. They're going to say, talk more about the Oldsmobile, because that's the life they lead, right? So you've got to get some counsel from outside your walls. Otherwise, you'll think you're crazy, but you're not crazy. You're smart.
And I mean, this one right here, this one's blowing my mind because, we typically and traditionally think, hey, let's get counsel, but we're going to do it by going to this conference to hear this vendor who's a thought leader on this topic. But, and we listen to them. And I mean, I guess I fall into this bucket, just by virtue of who I am, and Robert as well. But to engage in seeking counsel from real customers and from real people, that right there, that's such a powerful thing.
He's right. I mean, anybody else, they have no sense but to be like, hey, let me do this review on this vehicle.
Yeah.
Let's show them this. Let's show them that.
Love it.
Let's talk about our big sale.
Okay, so there you have it. Jay Baer, thanks so much for being with us today. We're gonna link listeners up to your book on Amazon. I think, you know what, I've read the book and it's phenomenal. Has really shaped a lot of the things that I believe in and kind of validated a lot of the stuff that we talk about in the episodes of the Dealer Playbook. So we'll link to that in the show notes, so stay tuned for that. But Jay, how else can people get in touch with you or follow you online?
best place to go is convinceandconvert.com. That's our award-winning blog, and you can find links to all of our podcasts there, and my daily video show, and ebooks and SlideShare presentations and all kinds of other things. Or you can just Google Jay Baer, Baer, and you can find a bunch of stuff there too.
Love it. Jay, thanks for being on the show with us today.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. That was Mr. Jay Baer, founder of convinceandconvert.com, best-selling author of Utility. Michael, what'd you think? I mean, that was a great one, man. I sat back and was just taking notes and just in awe listening to him. Like, just, it's so nice because I'm not saying that he like dropped so many bombs to me of stuff that I wasn't already in, tactics and things I wasn't already aware of and or that we're not already doing. But it like, isn't it nice to have that, like, for him to kind of like solidify everything and our thoughts?
Yeah, I think the validation is so crucial, right? Because we talk so much about this, and you heard me say it in the show. I mean, how many more guests are we going to have on the show to validate what we talk about before people start really executing on it? So that was kind of one thing for me that came out of the show. But the second thing is he talked about, kind of the concept of, going bigger, like whatever you think you can do, like think bigger and think more outside the box. And he provided some examples. Like, that was really cool how he tied in how relevant, like the sports, the kids sports, like, rosters are and the little league, team sports, like e-newsletter could be, because I think, that is so outside the box, yet so in the box at the same time, because you're engaging the community and you're engaging people in things that they really have a lot of invested interest in. And like he said, that translates back to, the more you can keep people's thoughts on you when the time comes, and you were talking about this too, when the time comes that they move from the 98% to the 2%, they're not just gonna go and shop around and do some comparison shopping. They're just gonna come into you because you're the one that's built a relationship with them.
I mean, I've always said, like, the name of the game is really to, my approach was always like, I'm going to have the people in my market, whether they want to or not, when they think about buying a car or shopping for a car, they hear somebody talking about buying for a car, shopping for a car, buying a new car, that whether they want to or not, they're going to think about me.
Yeah.
And like,
exactly.
that's the name of the game, without a doubt.
So there you have it. That's episode 50 of the Dealer Playbook podcast with Jay Baer. We'd love to get your feedback. 5-0, man. We'd love to get your feedback. Engage us in the comments in the show notes, www.thedealerplaybook.com/50. 50. I can't believe it. It's so cool. And you know what? We're gonna attach a link there where you can get your hands on Jay's book Utility. And you know what? He offered the less expensive ebook version, but I say, man, go all in. It's like 18 or 20 bucks, something like that. Get the full book. I've read it. It's incredible. It's gonna help transform your processes of content creation and how you become useful to people. Like we say, be valuable to somebody, not worthless to everybody, and that's going to give you some really cool steps that you can follow to make sure that happens. So again, www.thedealerplaybook.com/50. And until next time, we'll catch you later.
Later.